Lighthouses are as old as history. But today, modern technology is harnessed to service the lights and the needs of the men who man them. The helicopter, the computer and the VHF radio have made the service more reliable and reduced some of the hardship and danger. But this very technology is leading inevitably to fully automatic lighthouses without keepers. The Fastnet is the ultimate lighthouse, perched on a craggy rock out in the Atlantic off the southwestern edge of Ireland. Ireland is Europe's western approaches, and our lights are important. They're run by the Commissioners of Irish Lights and financed by dues on shipping with some government contribution.
Hello Valencia Fastnet, good evening. Very good then. 52909 99021 12415 Sea State Moderate. Okay, over?
Okay, sir, thank you, bye-bye.
Okay, Valencia, thank you, bye-bye.
On manned lighthouses, there are 3 men on duty at any one time, a principal keeper and 2 assistants. Their main job is to service the light and the fog signal, make sure they keep on working in the most difficult conditions of weather and sea. Since this film was made, the Fastnet Lighthouse has become automatic. It was demanned on April 5, 1989. In 1997, the Bailey overlooking Dublin Bay will become the last of our 22 lighthouses to bid farewell to its men, although the lighthouses will continue to be serviced by an attendant keeper. Because this country has no Coast Guard service, the lighthouses play other vital roles as well, advising and minding small inshore craft like fishing boats and yachts.
Yacht Barbara, Yacht St. Barbara, this is Fastnet Rock Lighthouse, Fastnet Rock Lighthouse. Do you read on 16 over?
St. Barbara, cell number 20983, class 4 in the Fastnet race. Over.
St. Barbara Fastnet, okay, thank you, and have a good trip, over.
St. Barbara, thank you, on 16 now.
This personal service was freely given by the keepers, and it will be missed, particularly by seamen in small boats. These days, the bigger ships have sophisticated communications, satellite navigation and weather facts, so it won't affect them as much.
The modern lighthouse is a robot. Everything is done by remote control and computer. This is the DATAC monitoring room in Castletown Bear, where one man keeps an eye on his robots. Each panel is a lighthouse, where once 3 men worked and lived. And this blank space is now filled in by the Fastnet. Ballycotton was established in June 1851 to protect the approaches to Cork Harbour and the important port of Queenstown, which is now Cove. It'll be manned until 1992. Lighthouse keepers could be cut off by bad weather for months at a time. This and their own self-sufficiency allowed them the opportunity to devote their considerable spare time to music and the arts and crafts they became famous for. This film, made in the last years of manned lighthouses, is a record of these men and their crafts. Men like Kieran O'Brien, a painter whose work forms a monument to a vanishing profession, and John Murphy, whose mouth organ music accompanies this film.
Well, I was always interested in sketching, and I did a lot of watercolour work. And some time ago then, when I was on Rathlin Island, I started the acrylics. I found a set of acrylic paints by accident, and I took a liking to them, and I've been at them ever since. There's no messing with turps or linseed oil or anything like that where there is with oils. I find them very handy, and you can wash your brushes in water afterwards. Other than that, they're very like oils. I paint in the sky first, and that will determine the rest of the picture. If you have a stormy day, you have a stormy sky, or a calm day, you have a calm sky. And then stick in the background, which is the lighthouse, the rock here. I don't know when the goats were brought out here first. I was out here in the mid-60s myself, and there were goats here then. That time they used to milk the goats here twice a day, and we used to have goat's milk, which is quite nice on cereals and on coffee and that. It's a bit strong to drink neat. Dan the cat is here to keep the rats away. I don't know who brought him out. We've hens here, and he walks around. They don't bother about him, and he doesn't bother about them. And I don't think he bothers about the nests or the young birds or anything like that either. I paint mostly seascapes because I'm so used to looking at the sea, and I like the idea that it's something it's moving. It's not something that's... The sea is interesting, and the sea changes colour so much. Winter, summer, from one day, from 1 hour to the next, from blues, greens, all kinds of colours. The likes of painting the Ballycotton lifeboat in this place, well, the Ballycotton lifeboat, I suppose, I think the Daunt rescue was the one that made it famous, and the Daunt lightship broke her moorings. I don't know whether she broke her moorings or dragged her moorings, but she drifted badly, and it did actually sink. And the crew of the Ballycotton lifeboat went out and rescued all the men on board. It was a bad stormy night and all that kind of thing, and it was a very heroic rescue. So this, of course, is a different lifeboat now. They have the Iron class, which is a lovely ship. She passes in and out here, and the lighthouse here being famous or a well-known landmark in this area. And I thought the two, Ballycotton lighthouse and Ballycotton lifeboat, going by, the two things, a good subject for a painting.
Sline Head near Clifton is the light that guards the southwestern tip of Connemara and the approaches to Galway Bay. In the past, 4 keepers, their wives and families, lived on this tiny rocky island of only 30 acres. It lost its keepers in 1990. One of them, Flann Egan, practices a traditional lighthouse craft with a West of Ireland twist to it.
Ever since I was a child in Clifton, I was interested in curraghs. On a Saturday, you'd see anything up to 30 curraghs from the islands, from Inish, Turbot and Turk, the quay in Clifton. They'd be in with fish, potatoes, vegetables for the market on the Saturday. And some of the women were as good on the oars as the men. I used to come home and my mother used to take the tar off my legs with butter. And that's how I got interested in curraghs. I've been making models for years since I joined the Lighthouse service. I ran out of material for ships and bottles, so I gathered a few bits and pieces together and said I'd make a model curragh for myself. It's a peculiarly Irish craft. It's their adaptability to the conditions on the west coast. They can be built to suit all purposes. For fishing, for carrying turf, even animals. They're a good seaboat for their size. Now, it's unique in this respect that in normal boat building, the keel is laid first. It's built from the bottom up, but the curragh is built from the top down. And after the planking, they're covered with calico. Calico is used because it adapts well to the tar that's used in the waterproofing process, or it's locally called bafferty. Went to Slinehead first in 1949. Took a few days off from school, but of course I was supposed to be studying at the time, and I brought a few books with me, and finished up a couple of months away. Slinehead is a very dangerous passage. Sound in there, very dangerous. All breakers. We used to leave from Slackport, which is roughly 3 miles from the island of Slinehead itself. It was a timber curragh, around 20 feet long, and no outboard motors at that time, no engines. So it was all 6 oars. In the winter time, you'd have to provision for maybe 3 months. Well, after 35 years, took early retirement, and I'm getting the bits and pieces together now. Lawn to mow, the hedges to do, keep the house in trim, and no watches to keep, of course. Don't have to get up in the middle of the night now, unless it's for something else. Yeah. But don't feel sentimental about it. The job I've left behind, I enjoyed it while I was in it, and made the most of it. It was tough at times, on the heist and the tier, with Derek on the fastnet, being pulled through the water in the month of January. Not very pleasant, but that was part of it all, so knocked the fear out of you.
Mew Island is one of the Copelands, off the coast of County Down. Its keepers are relieved by boat from Donaghadee, and it stands sentinel over important shipping lanes in the channel between Ireland and Scotland. It's a peaceful place where in May eider ducks find a safe spot to nest. Mew Island will be home to lighthouse keepers only until 1996, when it too goes automatic. Fran Lochry is the last of many generations of his family who were lighthouse keepers.
On the lighthouses, each of us are responsible for our own food. So naturally I had an interest before I had entered into the service, but I got a more creative attitude out here, because when one is responsible, you tend to take more care in your own health. I make anything from the good home cooking to to bread and cakes, and especially I love Italian dishes and Chinese. And one of the things I enjoy making is yeast bread. You put it into a hot press, cover it with a damp cloth and leave it until it has risen just above the tin.
Many of Fran's ingredients are grown on the island by himself and the other assistant keeper, B.J. Cronin.
Right, we get these ones, they look good. At the moment we're in the process of planting out some kale and cabbage plants, which we have grown from seed in the greenhouse. We don't use any pesticides, so it's all organic growing. You come up there with planting in. Seaweed is it's a great manure, and it's a great neutralizer for the soil. That's because our soil tends to be very peaty. Also, it has benefits in growing good big vegetables. More of that rain now, a bit more sunshine, warm. They'll be all hopping out of the ground.
And how long? When will they be ready to eat? Huh?
That's the main concern. Well, I also made a flan for my fellow colleagues. We decided to have a bit of a treat, and I made some little chocolate leaves to go with the cherries. I collected new leaves off the bramble bushes that are on the island, and you dip the leaves into the chocolate, and when they're good and hard, you then peel the leaves off. When we come on the rock, we're on here for 28 days, so it means that we have to provide provisions and victualling for the 28 days. To work out the amount of food, it takes a little bit of experience. When you first join the job, you find you either have too little or too much, but in time you balance out.
I would say.
Although we all supply ourselves with our own food in making things, but if one of us happens to make something of different, a speciality, or it's a treat, we usually share it among each other and enjoy the earnings of the day.
But if I was the rabbit, I'd make myself scarce down the end somewhere.
You're going to be allowed to go at the flan as well, yeah?
Oh yes,
Beautiful,
that's what it's put on the table for.
Beautiful.
I suppose if my arm was twisted, I'd have a piece of that as well, Fran.
Do you have flan and pizza?
Okay.
These beautiful single-cylinder horizontal oil engines compress the air for the diaphone fog signal. They are, like the keepers themselves, practically the last of their kind. On Wicklow Head, two former lighthouses act as leading marks for shipping. The more recent light is tucked away under the cliff, and until 1994, it's where Tom Joyce practices the most traditional of all the keeper's crafts.
You need to be on an isolated place to put ships in battle, because unless you have a lot of time in your hand, unless you're isolated, it's very difficult to sit down. There is a problem when you're based on land, because it's a lot easier to walk up the road across the fields or watching wildlife or something like that. They consume a lot of time. You require very basic tools. The Stanley knife is very suitable. A few chisels to cut out the hole and put it into shape. For the sails, some heavy paper, the way that won't break up on you, and a scissor to cut it. That's generally about it.
And of course a small drill. There are about 300 holes in this model, which in the old days would have been bored with a hot wire. This is the Crafts secret, a hinge of soft copper wire which allows the mast to be folded down, pushed through the neck of the bottle and raised again inside. All of Tom's models are old, square-rigged sailing ships, and by his reckoning he's made at least 200 of them.
I started putting ships in bottles from watching other keepers, especially Lenny Stockers. I was down the Tusker with him for a number of years, and it seems to be a bit of a challenge. You'll be wondering at first when you see this massive sails and timber, how could anybody get them into the neck of the bottle?
Lighthouse keepers were, and are, a remarkable breed of men. Hardy, resourceful, at home with technology and in love with the sea. It's little wonder that they spent the long and lonely hours between watches fashioning beautiful, intricate objects. It must have been relaxing to turn from the huge lights and prisms and massive engines to the miniature technology of models. The lighthouse service goes on. The black spots around our coast will still have their tall sentinels. The keepers and their crafts are already virtually a thing of the past. In some ways this may be a good thing. It's easy to over-romanticize life on a rock in the Atlantic in midwinter. But surely we can permit ourselves a little nostalgia for the passing of the model makers and musicians, the painters and the poets.
Having lived in a lighthouse on a bare rock, surrounded by sea for most of my life, and now retired, the thing I remember is dense fog clearing at the turn of high tide, and the stars coming out like primroses in the sky.